Today, we're focusing on SEL, the social emotional learning of the educators, of us as educators, but also how we can support our children that who are, well, when I say our children as educators, we regard them as our children, but they are students, our pupils that we're responsible for. They look up to us as educators. Some of them see us as surrogate mothers, surrogate parents, that they don't, and some of them not coming from a very stable background. We are that stability in their lives, and they actually cherish us as educators. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly to just talk us through some basic principles, some basic things that we need to adhere to throughout this session to help all of us. Okay, so here we go. And like I told us, Africanus, our trainers, teachers training workshop and wellness program in Kenya, okay, empowering teachers and inspiring the future. Now, our host this morning, Miss Ubuya Mildred. For those of us who have been in the sessions, the two previous sessions, you are familiar with Mildred. You know about Mildred. You know her experience and enthusiasm whenever she comes on. I'm standing in today for her. She was not able to join us today for personal reasons, and we extend our thanks, heartfelt gratitude to Mildred for the way she has actually been leading us. So Mildred is not able to join us today. She's one of our trustees for Kenya within Africanus. So I'm standing it for her. So just a gentle reminder, I know we're all muted, okay? Should be muted. So there will be a Q&A session at the end. Please use the raise hand feature to ask questions, or you can type questions in the chat if you are joining us on your own phone or on your own device. Alternatively, if you are actually joining us within a team, a group of you coming together, which we understand could be the context sometimes in Kenya and in some other countries. Okay, you can use the chat feature as well and raise your hand to ask questions. Keep comments on topic related. Okay, training will be recorded, so we are being recorded, and whatever comments we're making, please, let's be professional. We're professionals on this platform, and we keep it to the topic. Participants who do not follow the guidelines may be removed from this session, which makes sense, and post-training survey will be provided at the end of the training session. There will also be a Q&A session at the end, like I said earlier, for us. Okay, so let's introduce our speaker for today. Of course, before I do that, there will be a pre-training survey. Okay, you can drop your comment in the chat section for the pre-training survey, or there'll be a link also shared with us in the chat session for us to complete the survey. Please, let's complete the survey. It helps us to plan for future training sessions as well, and it helps us to pick up on questions you may not have had the opportunity or the time to ask during the live webinar, during this live workshop. So any questions you have that you couldn't ask during this session, or you couldn't ask, please use the survey and ask us. Also, the survey helps us to know, like I said, to inform us of future workshops you would like us, areas you would like us to focus on that we may not have dealt with this November. So this November has been quite important for us in terms of us being able to do this training session with you. So Malia, the person leading us today is somebody I have had the pleasure of knowing since I have been with Africanus since last year, a very wonderful colleague within Africanus, volunteer like myself, and she's an educator and a curriculum specialist. About Malia, and Malia has been with Africanus for a while, longer than myself, and Malia has been quite instrumental in her journey within Africanus. I know, okay, yes, put that back on. Within Africanus, she has been instrumental within Africanus and in helping us with in helping Africanus. My apologies, my screen is just moving up and down. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to share a little bit about Malia with us before we move on. So Malia, I'll give Malia an opportunity to talk about herself as she comes on, I've stopped sharing the screen so Malia can come on and just tell us a little bit about herself, her journey as an educator, and the work she's doing here in the UK. Malia works with Malia's passion, since I've met her, Malia's passion is on sound. She talks passionately about social emotional learning and helping educators to actually appreciate that framework and understand us as individuals so that we can actually understand and work with the students in front of us, the children in front of us better. Malia, over to you, please. Thank you. Just tell us a bit about yourself. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Lovett, for the lovely introduction. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining on a Saturday morning. I know it takes time and sacrificing your Saturday morning to attend the training, but thank you so much for that. I think Lovett has introduced me beautifully. There isn't anything that she's left me to highlight. It's just that I would like to highlight my journey with Afrikindness. It's been quite a while, I think more than 3 years that I've been with Afrikindness, and it is an absolutely lovely experience being part of a volunteer organization that does so much for the children. And I think the time that we started off, we were focused with UK, and gradually the organization has built up connections, partnerships. And when I get to see the things not just in education, but what Afrikindness is doing for the parents, for the children in the UK, and rolling it out to other regions, it's absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, I'm really proud to be part of Afrikindness. And yet again, it's all because of you guys, the volunteers, and most importantly, the educators that become part of us by volunteering as well. So I think I wouldn't be wrong in saying that anyone wanting to contribute towards Afrikindness would be more than welcome to join us. So we are introducing SEL, which is social and emotional learning, and it is embedded in the CASEL framework. We're not saying it's something that you may not be aware of. We're not saying it's something very novel that we are sharing here. You may be already doing things of similar kind, but all we are suggesting is that it's a framework that needs to be embedded in the curriculum, not as a one-off thing, but a completely, addition to a regular, implementation through this. So what does CASEL stands for? And what is it that we are trying to achieve through this session? So we will explore social and emotional learning, and specifically the CASEL framework, which is one of the most widely used research SEL models around the world. Our goal today is to understand why SEL matters. So why is it that it's important? What are the 5 key core competencies that we are focusing on here today, how we can embed these practices into our daily classroom routines, and how practical and realistic they are. So, okay. So moving on, as I just mentioned CASEL, and then is the bigger term, and in between it's SEL. CASEL stands for Collaborative for Academic, Social and Emotional Learning. It's an organization that has spent decades studying how emotional and social development impacts learning outcomes. So if we look at the definition, it would appear very compact, dense, but we would be unfolding it to make it simpler. And this will help us identify the 5 core competencies that we are emphasizing on today. So the process of social and emotional learning is when individuals acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationship, and make responsible and caring decisions. So the CASEL framework clearly outlined 5 core skills, which I would be sharing, but these core skills actually help not only just the students, but adults to navigate their emotions, develop healthy relationship, and make meaningful decisions. We as educators, it is our responsibility not just to improve our students academically, but we want them to develop as a holistic individual, better human beings, who are confident enough to contribute towards a healthy society. So having said that, these competencies that I would be sharing shortly apply across all learning settings. It's not restricted to any specific settings that we are suggesting here. We're saying CASEL or the CEL social and emotional learning framework can be implemented in classroom during extracurricular activities, could be after school programs, even at homes. The school can be contributing by involving the school, and at a bigger aspect when the school is more confident enough, then they might broaden it up to include community spaces. CEL is not something that we, as I've just mentioned, it's not something that we can consider it as an extra to the curriculum. It's part of the curriculum, and it should be made part of the curriculum because it naturally supports how children learn and how they interact with the world. So one of the things that I would like you to do for me is to think about an individual student who has had learning, whose state of mind was influenced, and it could be a positive influence or a negative influence, or because of their state of mind, and it was impacting their learning. So all I'm asking you is to think about an individual student that you found was being influenced by his or her state of mind, and as a result of that, their academics or individual personalities were being affected. Now I'll just stop sharing for a bit because I would like to share. So what you see on your in the chat box, I've shared the link. So I want you to be thinking about this individual student, as I've just mentioned, as a scenario. And while I'm sharing those, explaining CASEL and everything, keep thinking about this student that I've just asked you to think about. And by the end of the training, I would like you to suggest what out of this training could be a good solution for this student of yours, or could have been a good solution. If you think you have used a very similar solution to what I have shared, absolutely fine. Please feel free to share that. So in the Padlet, what we would be looking for is the situation. Please be careful about not sharing any information which could identify your school or the individual student, because we want to keep this as an anonymous sharing. So once you have done that, by the end of the training, we'd be looking at that to see whether things have improved or you already managed to improve it. Now, what we have next on our screen are the 5 competencies. So the definition that I share was quite condensed. So if we break it, it would turn out to be 5 key areas that we would want you to focus on, or we are suggesting to focus on. First one is self-awareness, understanding your own emotions, thoughts and values. It includes recognizing your strengths, limitation, and developing confidence and a growth mindset. The second one that we have for social and emotional learning is self-management, effectively managing emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. This includes self-discipline, stress management, goal setting, and staying motivated. I would say self-management is one of the key areas that most of us students are suffering or struggling to manage. Rather than suffering, I would say struggling to manage rather than suffering. The third one that we have is social awareness, understanding and emphasizing others, including those from diverse backgrounds. Now, there used to be a time where school was were quite focused on having one individual culture or practice. So it was much more easier because everyone belonged to the same practices, to the same possibly food or everything. But now that we are diversifying, we need to identify those. And then this involves showing compassion and recognizing social norms and ethical behavior. The fourth one that we have is relationship skills. That's another area where I would say the students are struggling or usually struggle. Building healthy and positive relationship. This includes communication, cooperation, teamwork, conflict resolution, and seeking or offering help when needed. Responsible decision making. Making caring, ethical, and constructive choices about personal and social behavior. It involves evaluating consequences and considering the well-being of oneself and others. So I would be emphasizing not just oneself, but others as well. Now, why are we suggesting this? Whatever we are discussing is heavily evidence-based. We have research that supports this. So what I am sharing in front of you is the finding of a publication by the Education Policy Institute, which was published in 2021. Which clearly shows that the percentage of students who improved with the addition of a SEL program was clearly highlighted. So if you see, there were skills, academics, behavioral, social behavior, emotional stress, attitude, and conduct problems that were being monitored. So one of the most important things that I would say before you introduce SEL in your schools, I would rather be suggesting that you monitor these aspects of in your school for those specific students and then see where the change is coming. So their finding clearly indicates that there was an improvement in skills, specifically which rose from 21.5% to 78.5%. What these skills were basically communication skills, team building skills, working as a team, so all that, and then followed by academics and the others. Now, not just skills and the others, you can see even the academics were improved, which rose from 36.5% to 63.5%. So there is a significance of using SEL in the curriculum, in the classroom, in the school, and making it part of a regular practice. So therefore, social and emotional learning helps with fostering children's social and emotional skill within educational setting, along with their academic skills. So this is what the researcher suggested. So I'm just reading it through from that. This can include developing young people's relationship, communication, decision-making, self-esteem, and behavior. SEL can play a central role in helping children to develop the skills for educational success and lifelong well-being. SEL can contribute to reduce the long-standing attainment gap between disadvantaged children and the peers. So it's not just we are enhancing the ones who are already progressive, but it can also reduce the attainment gap that we observe in the privileged or possibly the underprivileged areas of a specific region. Seeing this, the study suggests targeting of social emotional learning in education plans or as part of a leveling up educational agenda. Also to integrate SEL into the curriculum rather than delivering it as a fragmented one-off session. So this research has also suggested that it should be made or part of a regular, curriculum rather than as a one-off session. Moving on, where do we start? So I have introduced to you what SEL is, so the 5 competencies. Then I have shared with you the reason why we want you to be introducing those in your schools as educators, as heads of schools, or as heads of policymakers, planners. So where do we start? We have to have a thinking mind before we plan to start SEL, social and emotional learning, in our schools. think about your context. One of the most important thing is to think about your individual context. What might fit us may not fit you. What might fit you may not fit another region in your own country. So understanding your context, the demography of the students or the learners that you have, the dynamics of your school, what is practical, what is easily attainable. We are not asking the schools to heavily invest in cell programs. When you see the activities when I share, you would realize they are possibly the least needing investment area of the curriculum. So that takes us nicely into think about resources. I think my personal experience and research is the resource that needs some form of investment is the teachers. We need to train the teachers and support them to ensure that the staff is feeling confident to deliver the cell program or think about ideas to embed in the curriculum. Encourage the adoption of the whole school approach to cell, in which students have opportunity to apply skills in different situations and observe them being practiced by adults and peers. So it's not just one classroom practicing cell, it's classes or year groups practicing cell, and then gradually taking it further to include the school and taking it further, seeing examples through the adults in the school, seeing examples through peer work and all those kind of things. As part of this, encourage the involvement of students and parents in planning. So we don't stop into the school only. We think about involving parents and their contribution to plan out cell. It may sound initially it may sound quite overwhelming, but once you start taking it on a step basis, then you would be able to roll it out on a wider scale. Because there is enough evidence to suggest that involving parents and the wider community would actually help, have a better planning around cell. Ensure the targeted intervention support children who are at risk of poor outcome. So not just the mainstream, we're talking about children who may be neurodiverse, who may have physical disability. How is it that they could be included? How activities could be modified to include those? Now, I am sure you all are thinking about the activities. Don't worry, I am sharing those shortly. But before that, how is it that we roll it out? Rolling it out would start from definitely planning, organizing, training the teachers, but then you start from class level, gradually building it to a school-wide culture, practices and policies. Then you bring in families and caregivers involvement. You may have families and caregivers involvement right at the start in the planning phase, just to check with them if they're comfortable with the activities that you're introducing in your school. Once that is done, you can even have their participation in some form of activities. And once you feel that you have reached that level, you could try and bring in communities and authentic partnerships. Now, this takes us very nicely into the activities that we have here for you as an example. Now, before we get into that, I would still want you to think about that individual student and keep thinking about that. Listen to the activities that I've shared. And I hope you have started writing on the Padlet regarding your individual student, the situation at least, anonymously. And most importantly, if you're finding it difficult to do it on the Padlet, please feel free to do it in the chat box. I'm more than happy to have it there. So while I'm sharing, going back to this again, while I'm sharing, I would like you to think about that student and listen to the activities and see which activity and where is it that it would help that specific student of yours. So we move on to the first one, which is self-awareness. Let me just move this a little. Oh God. Okay, so what we have as the first one is self-awareness. It's about knowing ourselves, what we feel, why we feel that way, what are these strengths, what are our strengths and weaknesses or challenges that we have. So knowing that, what matters us the most regarding those. So there are students who are quite sensitive about their shortcomings or challenges, but there's some who are quite easygoing with those. So identifying that is really important. When students build self-awareness, they become more confident and more reflective learners. The activities that we are suggesting here with you is emotional check-ins, use feelings thermometer or emojis charts during morning meetings. Students share how they feel and why. The reason why we are suggesting this is that if, let's say, for instance, a student is continuously coming up and identifying the emoji which suggests that he's not very happy, then possibly this needs to be looked into a little further to identify what could be the reason behind. And that would also in return make the student feel that he's heard and listened to. The second activity that I have here is strength journal. We also call those as reflective journals. These could be used with students at a higher level, but we can start off at junior level as well with lesser expectation, less detail, where the students write or draw about their personal strengths or something they are proud of each week. Now, if you recall, I have mentioned right at the start that this is something that needs to be happening on a regular basis, not as a one-off, so that this becomes a norm of the school and the student knows, all right, if I am feeling something, tomorrow morning I'll go and share. If I have achieved something this week, I'll be sharing this in my reflective journal as something that I'm really proud of. And these little things would actually make them, more aware of themselves. So the other thing, the last one that I have on the list is the collage. Create a collage using pictures or words that present students' interests, identities, and values. So yet again, involving them to show what they are from the inside, and they wouldn't be able to show unless they're aware of it. So we are creating the self-awareness through these activities. And yet again, I would say that these three activities are not just limited. You can be as creative depending on your context. The second one that I have is self-management. These are especially important because it relates to behavior regulation, impulse control, focus, and perseverance. Self-management isn't about forcing children to behave. It's about teaching them the skills to regulate themselves. So we have a lot of behavioral issues in our schools these days. And as I mentioned right at the start, that this is somewhat, I think, the most needed to be addressed area of social and emotional learning. So the activities that I have is mindful minute, start or end the day with 1 minute breathing or strengthening exercise. This may sound a bit irrelevant, but it actually helps calming down. There is enough evidence to suggest that. The goal wasn't to share those evidences here, so I'm just sharing the activities that have been endorsed by various organizations associating it with SEL. Goal setting tracker. Students set weekly goals, academic or personal, and reflect on their progress on Friday. So that's something that could be done on a weekly basis. Calm down corner. Now we do have this practice of sending a student out and making it appear as a punishment. Rather than making it appear as a punishment, we should make it appear as a space for them to calm down, to get their sensory tools, to get their sensory regulated better. So designate a space with sensory tools, coloring sheets, and breathing cards where students can self-regulate. So self-regulation is all the core that we are focusing on in the calm down corner, rather than saying, all right, you're not behaving, please leave the room. So this is a much milder way of approaching anyone who needs some self-regulating time. The other thing that I was thinking to suggest was, yes, it's not added in this list, is the visual schedule. So if we provide a visual schedule for the students of what is expected in a week prior to the week starting, that really helps them to regulate their anxiety. Every day coming and finding things that would be covered in the lesson as a surprise can actually trigger anxiety, and that may require some self-regulation. So, but if you have a plan and that is communicated with the students, all right, next week we're doing this, or today we would be starting with this and ending with that. So that might be another way of getting them prepared, and there is evidence to suggest that that enhances engagement. The third one that I have is social awareness, which is the ability to understand the feelings and perspective of the others. This is crucial for creating inclusive classrooms, especially in diverse environments. The activities that I have here for you is empathy walk. Students pair up, share stories about a challenge they have faced, and then they reflect on what they learned about and empathize. So in this case, they share a challenging situation, but this would be more, you'll have to be very careful about that the others who are listening, they acknowledge and empathize with the person sharing. If that is not achieved, then possibly the goal of this activity would be, would be minimized. So perspective talking scenario, discuss classroom or playground conflicts and ask how might each person feel, why they may have behaved in a certain way. So getting themselves into the shoes of someone else and feeling their reactions, and it's not justifying their reactions, but definitely feeling how the reason for the way they have reacted. Cultural celebration day. Invite students to share traditions, food, or stories from their culture to build understanding and respect. This is a very nice thing to acknowledge the diverse environment that our students or our children are studying in. The fourth one that I have is relationship skills focusing, which focuses on communication, teamwork, active listening, and healthy conflict resolution. In many classrooms, academic challenges are often related to relationship challenges, and that can cause most of the disruption. So the activities that I have here, and you may have more in mind, corporate challenges, use team building games like build the tallest tower, with limited materials to encourage collaboration, or they may create their own stuff while working with each other. Called conflict role play is the second one that I have. Act out common conflicts and practices using I statement and actively listening to resolve them. So role play is something really, really important in achieving relationship skills. Strong relationship skills can help students work effectively in pairs and groups, and solving conflicts peacefully and build supportive peer connections. So that's what the fourth one is suggesting here. Now, if you move to the last one, which is responsible decision making, this competency is choosing actions that are ethical, safe, and constructive. So we are training our children to be more, responsible for their acts and their behavior. It involves weighing consequences, considering others, and thinking critically. Critical thinking is something I am an advocate of, because I have seen once the students are made to realize their surroundings, their actions, things are resolved on their own very, very easily. So the activities that we are suggesting here is decision tree, walk students through problem solving steps. What's the problem? What are their opinion? What might happen? And what is the best solution? So that's one of the things that you could do. Classroom agreements. Let students co-create class rules. Oh, this is something that I love a lot, because when these rules are created by the students, they own it and they try following it. And even if the teacher points them out that this is something that you've created and you're not following it, they immediately acknowledge it, and things sink in very quickly. They learn about fairness, responsibility, and consequences. The last one that we have is community projects, engaging student in service learning like recycling drives or kindness campaigns or practical real-world decision making. So those are the kind of things that will actually help them work with each other and acknowledge each other's strengths, limitations, and work to achieve a goal collectively. So those are the skills that I wanted to share. Now, if we take SEL a little further, because when we started off, I talked about school level SEL and then rolling it out further. So I have two examples where the community can come in. One of the common ones, which I have witnessed myself and my children have been part of, is during Christmas, the school has the list of people who are old, people who are on their own, or possibly families who are suffering financially. So the school makes collection from the student themselves, and then they buy gifts. At times, gifts are donated to the school. They wrap them, and those students themselves take them and deliver them along with the teacher in the background to those homes. So it's not just the younger one, it's a little senior. So let's say 11, 12 years that they'd go for this. The other thing that where community involvement can actually have a positive impact, and that would be part of SEL, is inviting motivational speakers from the community. It could be related to sports, it could be related to education, it could be parents who are professionals. One of the examples that we have Sir Andy Murray, who's a tennis player in Britain, and he's well known. His mum used to visit schools in Scotland and motivate parents to share her experiences. How is it that she managed to identify a specific skill in her son, and she created more opportunities. So that was what she shared from a parent's perspective. And I went to it, and I wasn't limited just thinking about tennis. I was thinking about other provisions that I could identify in my children, and then possibly take it a little further. So those are the things that we are suggesting related to SEL. So as we wrap up, I'm sure I'll be checking the Padlet shortly. Now, I would give you a few minutes to think about, the possible activities and the student that you had in mind, what might fit in this, fix in the situation that you are in with your student. But the thing that I want to highlight here is that SEL is a longitudinal program. I'll stress again, it shouldn't be considered as a one-off. And it's not likely to work if it's a one-off. It's not going to show any results if it's just a fragmented one-off session. It needs to be integrated properly in the curriculum. Would need a lot of prior planning, and that would be within the educators, could be teachers, heads, or possibly on a wider scale. Having said that, the evidence that I wanted to highlight again, that SEL once SEL becomes part of a school culture, we always see positive change, improved behavior, better academic performance, reduced anxiety, stronger relationship, and a more positive classroom environment. SEL supports students not just academically, but as a whole human being. So schools are not just to promote progressive or progression in academics. We are targeting to produce complete and better human beings. So that's that. Let me just stop sharing and see what we have on the Padlet. If you have anything.
So massive thank you to Malia for this session. Cell is, I know we've condensed quite a lot of material, a lot of information into this session, into this 20 minutes, 25 minutes session, a talk that Malia gave to us this morning. But it's a lot when we talk about Cell and you look at the 5 frameworks. But like she kept reminding us, as leaders in our schools and as teachers, educators, Cell, if you have an influence in designing the school curriculum, Cell is not a one-off session and should not be a one-off thing, just an afterthought. No, Cell should be embedded in the curriculum for it to work. And when it's effectively embedded in the curriculum and the children get used to that they have one session, even if it's 1 hour of Cell program fortnightly, bi-weekly or weekly, it really embeds these nuggets that Malia has shared with us this morning into the minds and into the development of our students. Thank you so much, Malia. Very useful session this morning with lots of takeaways. So we just go to the Q&A. Some of us may have questions about any aspect of the Cell framework. So whether he's talking about the self-awareness, whether he's talking about self-management, whether he's talking about the social awareness, or whether he's talking about relationship skills or responsible decision-making skills, any aspect of the five strands of Cell that actually that you would like a little bit more clarification on, please feel free to post your question in the chat. Use the chat forum to type your question, and Malia is here to answer them as much as possible. So we'll just give people a couple of times to question and answer session to ask questions about Cell. And thank you so much to the person Yusuf, who actually captures and makes little notes of the talk, just summarizes it quite nicely. Key aspects of it, he summarized quite nicely for us in the chat. It can be a bit interrupted, but it's a very good way of summarizing the key aspects of the Cell, because we can't talk about promoting Cell in our schools if teachers are not trained on how to deliver Cell, which is very important. The training, which is why we're doing these workshops, the training aspect is important. Okay, we cannot give what we don't have. So as an educator, if I don't know about Cell, how can I actually promote it in my classroom? And even if I know about Cell, but I don't know how to teach it and how to support my students, how would I be able to actually do that effectively? And I'll be having all these symptoms in the classroom. A child who is always in a tantrum, or the one who doesn't talk at all, or the neurodivergent student, or the one who needs attention here and there, or the one who has anxiety issues, or the one that I haven't even picked up. And for us, we look at the academic aspect all the time, but there is more to academia than just good and excellent report from school. And no, there is more. There is emotional aspect as well that needs unpicking, and that is the whole essence of Cell. It's that emotional aspect of our job that needs unpicking, and sometimes we ignore and sweep under the carpet like it does not exist, but it does exist, and we need to be aware of it for our own selves. Okay, understanding ourselves, our triggers, so that we can support the students in front of us in our classrooms every single day. So we're still waiting for the questions to come through. Vanessa, do you have any prepared questions already prior to the workshop?
No, there are no questions I had beforehand.
Okay. While we're thinking about that, and maybe pondering on the question, the activity Malia wanted us to do on the Padlet, when she said, think about that one individual, that one student in your classroom. Okay, doesn't matter their age, they are in your classroom. And sometimes it can be quite difficult when you have a classroom with 50 students, 60 students, 70 students. It can be quite hard to actually focus on that one individual child, okay, with all the other factors and other things we have to deal with on a daily basis as educators, including delivering the curriculum that has been given to us. It can be hard, but think carefully. It could be that one child that always comes in late to lesson, or that one child who is persistently absent. But because of so many things happening, we don't have the time to actually drill down to find out the reason for their absence. Why are they not in school? Okay. Or why is that one child always late to school? Right? Or the hygiene. Why are they dressed in this particular way? They keep wearing the same clothes or school uniform every single. That's not quite neat and tidy.
And to endorse our observations, I think the emotional daily check-in that we have suggested as an activity would confirm if a student is, let's say, picking a sad emoji all the time. So there may be something happening in the background. So we can tie in really well with our observations and what we see as evidence from the student.
Okay, there's a question here from Amanda. Looking at the SEL framework, how can we contextualize the skills to be more age specific or age favorable, especially for younger learners, particularly aspects of responsible decision making? Malia?
So in terms of that, I think it's a very good question. SEL itself, it's quite flexible, and I, as I just said right at the start, it's all contextual based. So if your learners are young learners, you might think about having activities which are more pictorial, which are more hands-on. So for instance, you might want to talk about simple things like emotional checks could be, how was your day yesterday? I mean, just I have seen a couple of schools that they have these a smiley face and a sad face, and the students would pick that, and then they would come into the class and tell why did they made that specific choice, or they were made to, let's say, the example that I shared during the presentation is building a tall tower. They're working together. So that's team building skills that we are focusing on. Empathizing could be equally achieved by if someone has actually pushed a child, what was the reason? Why do you think that you were pushed? Could there be something that you could have done? So those reflective questions could be part of that. But building that in an activity or doing that on a regular basis is something that we are suggesting. We're not saying that you're not doing that. You would all be doing some form of social and emotional reflection and learning. But the thing is, it should be made on a regular basis to feel the change.
Thank you very much, Malia. Another
Thank
question just came through. Thank you, Abiodun, for your question. And thank you so much, Amanda, for that question. I hope Malia has given you some strategies to support in terms of contextualizing SEL within your school for the different age to make it more age appropriate. And the activities she has suggested can also be tweaked to make them more age appropriate. Now, Abiodun, to your question, how can teachers embed SEL into a regular lesson plan?
So every lesson plan cannot have all 5 core competencies. So you would have to think about, all right, so am I focusing on team building? So possibly assigning a project and it doesn't have to be completed in one session. It could be termly based. You could have a project introduced at the start of the term and the children keep working on it, let's say once a week on one aspect of it. But there, let me just tell you one thing: SEL is not something that you would think in the morning and introduce in the class that very afternoon. It requires a lot of planning. So you'll have to think about the project. You'll have to think about how to impart it, how to give the guidelines around that, clarify the expectations, clarify the the aim of the project. There is no harm in telling the students what is it that you're helping them to achieve. So those are the kind of things that can be done to embed. So the reason why I shared those activities were to start you thinking about, those are not the only ones. There could be more. What are the ones that I can have with my students? Because you know your students better. You would know which aspect of those competencies are they need to focus on. Possibly someone might say, oh, my students are really good with teamwork, so why not focusing on self-reflection more? So it is something that you can pick and choose, or you can actually have the whole framework embedded in specific areas, not just one subject focusing on all 5. So possibly art may have some teamwork, art may have nice decision making or appropriate decision making, inclusion, representation of inclusion. So it is not just one subject taking the entire burden of SEL, it's the entire curriculum that we are emphasizing on.
Thank you so much, Maliha. And to add to that, to what Maliha has just said in terms of curriculum, again, that word keeps coming up again and again and again throughout this workshop, that SEL is not a one-off session, right? When I started teaching in this country 24 years ago, we had what we call life skills, and it was like a drop-down session once a term. The whole school, the activities we collapse and then we'll do a life skill session. Now it has changed. We call it PSHCE, and it is now part of the curriculum. We teach it every single week, 1 hour a week of PSHCE. So when we are designing, in terms of subject areas, when we're designing our schemes of work at the beginning of the year, that is where we look at the different strands of SEL and see how we can incorporate them into the topics we're going to teach, we're going to deliver. So it takes that preparedness and preparation and thoughtful thinking through what we're teaching and how SEL can be incorporated into the different topics we're teaching. So it's not something we just do ad hocly, like Maliha has just explained to us. Another question has come through, Maliha. In fact, 2 questions from Empress. Thank you very much, Empress, for your question. Empress says, and can one integrate SEL when preparing the universal design learning lesson plan, or SEL should be taught as a lesson differently? I guess, Empress, if I come in there, your question ties into the other question Amalia has just answered in terms of incorporating SEL into the curriculum, not a one-off session. So when you're designing a lesson plan based on your scheme of work, based on your curriculum that you are going to be delivering, SEL, think about the different strands of SEL and incorporate them from the very onset, instead of just when you're teaching that particular lesson, because when it's part of the curriculum, it makes it not straightforward but more practical in terms of embedding it. I hope that makes sense. Abiode, thank you very much for your question. It says, what is the difference between self-awareness and self-management?
So I think there is a very thin line of difference that I would like to highlight here. Self-awareness is knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, whereas self-management is controlling your emotions. Remember, we talked about regulating yourself. So in that case, those are the differences. So for instance, you're more aware of, I'm good at this thing. Let's say I'm good at maths, I'm good at public speaking, knowing that, and then possibly pushing yourself to participate more on that. Self-management is, again, knowing that, let's say I get annoyed at this thing. So what are my strategies? So that's more on the kind of things that you can do to manage your emotions. So there is a very thin line of difference, but there is a difference between the two, and this is where we would differentiate, and that's how we would be differentiating in the activities that we do around them.
Thank you so much, Malia. If I could come in there as well, just to add a little bit to it. When we're talking about self-awareness, what are your triggers? Okay, that's a question I always ask myself. Understanding self, so that I can understand my students. What are the triggers? What are the factors that trigger those particular emotions in you and reactions? So now that I know what the triggers are, how can I self-manage and self-regulate? So I know that one of the activities that Malia suggested was the corridor, calming down. Okay, so we encourage students to take a step and just go to one corner and calm down and reflect on their behavior, and reflect that behavior could have been triggered by other factors external to the classroom environment. Okay, so a student may have said something to them like children normally do, and they say, oh, you're making reference to their parent, and the recipient may have had family issues, so they reacted to that comment because it triggered something in them. So it's about understanding what the triggers are and also giving them the opportunity to build and develop their self-regulation skills. Now I know the questions are coming in now, but I'm going to stop us because it's 9 o'clock, and I'm going to hand over to Vanessa, who will talk us through some other ways of asking questions. And yeah, Vanessa, over to you. Thank you very much.
Right, perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for such an engaging and interactive presentation on SEL. I'm sure we all found it really informative and helpful. I'm just gonna, give me one moment. I'm gonna share my screen. Can you confirm that you can see that?
Yes, I can.
All right, perfect. So our links are available, our social media links. Those will be posted in the chat. We encourage you to interact with us online. So on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all the details will be posted. And then we have a post-training survey available. Just a reminder that these sessions are recorded and they are certified. So if you want to receive certification for attending these sessions, please complete the survey. Give us your insights. Let us know what you'd like us to do differently. We'd be open to hearing more about that. So the link for that will be posted as well. As we come together as a team to brainstorm what the next phase of this project will look like. That is a teachers training workshops and personal development program. So as a team, we'd love to invite some of you to join a focus group. This will be hosted sometime in December, but more details will follow shortly. The link to that will be posted in the chat as well. All of you are really chatty. So we encourage you to come, be a part of us. You will join some of the educators, some of Liha, Livette, and the educators from the previous sessions. Have some one-on-one time to interact with them and give us your feedback about what next phases of this program would look like. We also have the Africanus Global Teachers Hub. So we encourage you to join now. It's open to all teachers across the world, so it gives you an opportunity to build a network and share insights with other educators and professionals in this field. Please do join. In case you had any questions that haven't been answered during today's session, those will be answered on the Teachers Hub. And we took in your feedback with some people saying that they don't have access to Facebook. And so we also respond to the questions on our social media platforms. So please have a look out on LinkedIn throughout the week. You'll see responses from our educators, our host Mildred, and the rest of the Kindness team. So that's a QR code if you'd like to scan that and join. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to do so, and you can also click the link. And finally, thank you so much for joining today's session. So this is the last of 3 webinars that we've had hosted, as Livette beautifully summarized in the beginning. The first was on building educator self-esteem, the second on improving foundational literacy, and this very last one about incorporating SEL, and specifically SEL in context. So thank you so much to our educators and the team at Africanus for hosting an incredible program, and to all of you for attending.